Hello, good afternoon. I'm Michael Davis from Davis Abogados, Solicitors and Barristers. Okay, today, as I'm recording, it's the 31st of January 2022. Okay, I'm going to talk about this famous 720 form that has during these years caused a lot of pain, suffering, and worries for many residents in Spain. This is basically the declaration by which you have to tell the Spanish tax office about all your assets abroad, and with extremely severe penalties if they're not declared correctly. Okay, well, on last Thursday, on the 27th, the European Court of Justice has declared the 720 form illegal. Both the actual declaration and all the different penalties and fines that it imposed. What does this mean? Well, basically, it means that unless the government now rewrites the law and creates a new declaration of assets abroad that's less unfair, let's say, we basically don't have a 720 form anymore. It will also mean that if you have received one of these, some of these horrific fines and penalties during these years for non-presentation of the 720 form, and I remind you that they can fine you up to 150% of the amounts that have not been declared, or they could fine you between 5,000 and 10,000 euro for every piece of wrong information declared on the form. We all know that the document was extremely complex to fill in, so it was very easy for somebody to make this kind of mistake. It will also put an end to the misery of those people that when the obligation became due for the first time, I can't remember, it was 5 or 6 years ago, they didn't declare it because they didn't find out about it. And then in successive years, they've had this horrific situation of not knowing what to do, because if they now declared the assets abroad on the 720 form, they'd be admitting that they didn't do it when they should have, like the year before or 2 years before, and that the potential for a fine up to 150% of those amounts. So they've been sort of living, wondering what to do, whether to own up now, not do so. And we know that a lot of people were suffering this because of the huge liability that they knew was lurching in the background. The European Court of Justice says that not only was the actual obligation imposed on residents too steep, and it went against the EU treaties, because basically it was limiting the freedom of movement of capital between the EU countries. Why? Well, the reason is very simple. That if a resident in Spain had all their money in Spain, they didn't have to declare the 720 form. While if the money was in a third country, even an EU country, they had this obligation imposed on them with such serious penalties. So why was it going against the freedom of capital? Well, basically, by doing it this way, Spain was making it sort of easier for people to have the money in Spain than to keep it abroad. That's completely against the different EU treaties. So that's one of the reasons it was declared illegal. Another one was a system of statute of limitation. All tax obligations are subject to a statute of limitation, except for this one. Why? Because if you, for example, in Spain, commit a tax sin and you've got some money that you didn't declare 6 years ago, after 4 years, the taxman can't claim from you, and therefore they can no longer claim, and therefore basically you're safe after those 4 years since the day that you should have declared that money. What happened with the 720 form is that every year you had to declare the assets that you owned abroad, unless you declared them before, or if you had declared them before, if they hadn't changed substantially, to a value of more than 20,000 euro. So it means that if, for example, you had some money abroad, after 4 years, the statute of limitation would never kick in, because every year you are non-compliant because you're not declaring it that year. So in practice, basically, they created a system that resulted in people always being on the hook, because each year the period for the statute of limitation would start again, because you were committing the sin each year by not declaring. That was the second thing. So, and the third reason that it's been declared illegal is because of just how over the top the potential fines for non-compliance were. I.e., basically, if you make the calculation between surcharges, penalties, we've all worked out that the actual potential amount that you'd have to pay the Spanish tax office if you were found out with this money abroad was up to 150% of its value. So all in all, very good news. So what does that mean now? Well, basically means that if you received one of these enormous fines for non-presentation, you could, we suggest that you speak to a lawyer and look into the possibility of claiming the money back. In our particular case, in principle, I don't think that we will be handling these cases, but by all means, get in contact with us, and if we and we'll inform you of who does as and when we find out which firms are actually going to handle these claims. The second thing is, if you are one of these people that have not been declaring the assets abroad, and you've had all these sleepless nights because you sort of found out, realize that one day they may catch you out, you don't need to worry, because they now cannot impose any fines or sanction based on the previous 720 law. What will happen next March when the next presentation is due? Well, you won't have to make one unless the government creates a new declaration of assets abroad declaration. And that's the last sort of thing I wanted to mention. Well, I presume at the moment the sentence hasn't actually been published. What the European Court of Justice has done is a press release in which they've explained the basics, and I have attached it down below in the comments to this YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can read the full transcript on my blog post if you're on my blog. So can they create a new declaration of assets abroad obligation? Yes, they could, and when the sentence comes out and they've had the time to study it, they may do that, but it definitely won't be as harsh as the one that we've got at the moment. Or they may even decide that they've had enough and don't actually create this obligation to declare again. Okay, well that's it for this quick video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.